pig. Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. Today we're going to kick the old hornet's nest and talk about our pastured pigs causing the feral hog problem. So come along. So last month I introduced a video where I approached the subject of how you could use pigs to clear off some rough land that's grown over, and how pastured pigs could take care of that. And I think in the process I ticked off most of Texas. So that video really blew up. In fact, I think we're at the point of recording this video, I think we're over 400,000 views on that, which is much, much more than this channel normally gets. So it got a lot of people that aren't familiar with what we do here commenting. But those comments really showed me just how much misinformation there is out there about feral hogs and pasture hogs. And let me read some of these highlights to you. So one comment said, escaped pigs will turn into nasty-ass wild hogs in just a few generations. This idea of using pasture pigs to clear land, somebody says, this is where feral hogs come from. Somebody says, that's the worst advice ever. Hogs are so invasive. Another one says, keep the pigs on your land. You can't. They're going to turn on you. You going to turn on me? I'm watching you. Another one says, and this is how you get feral pig problems. Lesson 101. And this is my favorite. This one makes the Hall of Fame. Is tusks are a sign of going feral, 2 to 3 generations. So Dan here, who has some pretty good kicking tusks, he's getting ready to eat me, I guess. Right, buddy? You gonna eat me with those things? And then another good one that I think is top of the list is pigs will go feral if you aren't careful. It happens within weeks. So if I go away on vacation, and I don't interact with these guys for a week, and I use my drop feeder, then I could come back and they could be ravenous werepigs. So you can kind of see there's some misinformation there we need to address. So let's start at the beginning. Where do feral hogs come from? Or where did feral hogs come from? Well, when a daddy wild boar and a mama wild pig love one another. No, that's not the direction we're going. For the history of the feral hog or the wild boar, you got to go back several hundred years. Pigs are not native to North America. They were introduced by the Spaniards back in the 1500s. Well, to answer that question where they came from, I want to go straight to a source, because I don't want you to just think, oh, this is Troy the farmer standing in the woods here just spouting stuff off. So according to an article by Mississippi State University Extension, and I'll link to that down here in the video description, the first wild pigs in the United States originated solely from domestic stock brought to North America by early European explorers and settlers. Many years later, Eurasian wild boar was introduced into parts of the United States for hunting purposes. In areas where domestic pigs and Eurasian wild boars were found together in the wild, interbreeding occurred. Today, many hybrid populations exist throughout the wild pigs range. So the domestic genetics you see in feral hogs today are from domestics from hundreds of years ago, mixing with the Eurasian wild boar, which is kind of a Russian genetics there. And that's where the interbreeding was taking place, and that's why you still find those genetics today. What's interesting is, as recently as the early 1900s, when they brought the Eurasian in mass, they released them for the opportunity of introducing this hunting game. So people that were avid hunters are like, we need another game here, let's bring in some wild boar, because those are fun. In 1912, the Eurasian wild boar was first released in Hooper Bald, North Carolina, and then later released throughout the South and here in West Virginia. So there's multiple places throughout the South, including here in West Virginia, where these boars were released. People release these Eurasian wild boars for the purpose of providing a hunting game. You got to start sleeping on the other side, buddy. You're wearing a bald spot there. So what's interesting is, of course, those pigs that were released throughout the South in the early 1900s, they have just thrived, right? Because the conditions were ideal. A lot of agriculture, mild climates, not a lot of predation in that area. So those pigs just took off like gangbusters. And that's why you see the distribution of the wild boars predominantly through the South. In fact, according to a map by the University of Georgia here, you can see the distribution of the pig population and how much it's changed over the last 30 years. So the gray areas are the pig population and distribution in 1988, black is 2009, and red is 2013. So you can see how they've spread. California really got a winner there in 2009. One thing interesting to notice on this map, however, is you see these little dots. One thing to notice on the map, however, if you see the dots up there in the northern part of the country, you think, so what did these boars do? Did they just hitchhike? Did they decide, hey, we're going north, we hate the south and the hot weather and the humidity, so we're going up there? No. Thanks for slinging mud on my face, dude. No, what happened in this situation, and again, this is according to University of Mississippi Extension, article goes on to say the popularity of wild pigs as game species has played a major role in the expansion of their range throughout the United States. The sudden presence of wild pigs in new areas is most often a result of two reasons: escapes of stocked animals from privately owned or game-proof fence hunting preserves, or illegal translocation, the practice of capturing wild pigs, transporting them to new locations, and releasing them into the wild. So I find that interesting. So these game preserves, these private hunting lands, are going down into the Texas area and the south, wherever there's a proficient amount of pigs, or a prolific amount of pigs, scooping them up and saying, hey, I'm going to take them up here to North Dakota or wherever, where I've got a couple thousand acres of a hunting ranch, and I've got fence, boar-proof fence, that I'm going to put them in, and we guys that belong to the club, we're going to be able to hunt pig now. And you know how that goes, right? All that stuff gets loose, and you start to have population taking off. All right, I want to take a quick break from this video to recognize our sponsor. And our sponsor of this video is Olight. And at the time of recording this spot, you still have time to take advantage of their Christmas specials. And there's two lights that I think you really want to take a look at. And I featured this in a previous video, but man, this has really been my go-to. This is the Mini Marauder, and this thing is unbelievable. It has all kinds of different features, flood, it has a really concentrated beam, has dimmer switches, all those type of things. Very, very slick, very handy. And then the latest is an upgrade, or maybe a downgrade, if you will, as far as size goes. This is the Perrin 2, which is a headlamp. It has a strap that goes with it. This is one I've had this for a couple years, but they just came out with the Perrin 2 Mini, which this thing is really on point. Check out how tiny this thing is, but still super bright, has multiple brightnesses, and definitely gets the job done. Comes with a head strap that you can lock it in real easily, and then strap it on your dome if you need to. So this is a perfect light for, you know, what's neat is you can change the direction you need to. And this is the perfect light to have when you're out at night chasing your escaped pastured pigs and tracking them down before that clock strikes midnight and they turn into feral and grow teeth and fangs and wear a cape and all that type of stuff. So be sure to check this out. I'm going to put the link below in the video description and take advantage of it. There's all kinds of specials they got going on for Christmas. So check that out. All right, back to our discussion. So that's coming from non-pastured pig sources. These are farm extensions that are providing this information. It is not somebody that's pro-pastured pig. In fact, most of these universities are still conventional pig systems. So it's clear to show you, to see that feral hogs are not coming from pastured operations. So in my video where I suggest using pigs to help clear land, if you use them in a pastured setting, they are not causing a feral hog situation. It's not going to increase the feral hog population. And so I even want to make the point that you may say, well, yeah, Troy, if these pigs get out, though, they can become feral. Well, yeah, if they get out and they survive multiple generations and they're able to breed with feral hogs in the area, which we have very, very little in West Virginia, then there's a chance that they could proliferate and become feral well into multiple generations. These domestic pigs are looking for everything we're all looking for: food, water, shelter, and safety to have their litters. These pigs, if they get out, they come right back. They know this is the food source. They know the sound of my side-by-side is the dinner bell. They know when they see me, hey, that's the food guy. So it's not like they're waiting for a chance to jailbreak and hit the hills and go have sex with a bunch of wild boars. In full disclosure, right now, I'm working on my fence. My fence has been unplugged for about 3 weeks now because I'm still working on repairing some areas. These ladies ain't going anywhere. So look at this walking sausage casing. If she would escape, could she become feral? Well, yeah. Over multiple generations, she probably wouldn't be feral. And we have to understand what's the definition of feral. Could she survive out on her own? Possibly. She's as big as a house right now because she's pregnant. But she could possibly survive. Her offspring could possibly survive out there. But a pig isn't any more prone to going feral than, say, a dog or a cat or a cow. Think about even feral chickens down in Key West. So everything can go feral if it's managed to survive and find a way to find its own food source. So does it happen more frequently in pigs? No. There's nothing unique about a pig that says it's going to be more feral than any other domestic stock. Splashing me with mud. And to come back to my favorite comment, do pigs undergo a physiological or morphological change when they become feral? No, they do not. They do not grow fangs. They do not get extra hair. Their noses don't extend when they become feral. If these pigs were feral, they'd look exactly the way they do. These are heritage breeds. That's why they're so hairy. And here's a little secret for you. All pigs have tusks. Merida has tusks. Noelle has tusks. The females, Dan and Mongo, definitely have tusks because they're male. Theirs are just longer than the others. If you think a pig grows tusks because it's wild, you are misinformed. If you think, well, Grandpa had pigs on the farm, they never had tusks, well, maybe they were docked, because a lot of farmers would do that. They'd simply clip those teeth out when they were young. So just in case you want to call BS on that, say, Troy, no, that's not true. They actually do change. You're thinking of something incorrectly. I'm going to go to Minnesota's DNR, which we all know DNR is perfect, right? But it says here, a common misconception is that pigs undergo a dramatic physical transformation when they go feral. But there is no difference when you start getting morphological, says Nelson of the Minnesota DNR. All pigs have tusks, though the tusks on domestic hogs are sometimes docked, and all pigs grow hair. You just can't look at a pig and say, that's a feral swine. So those y'all in Texas that have those boars, those wild pigs that are crazy looking, got the long noses, big old turned up tusks, super hairy, the razorback, if you will, that's not because they're feral. That's because they're from Eurasian pig genetics. That's the way they've always looked. That's the way they will continue to look. With obviously just basic genetic mutation, that's the genetics they have. The domestic stocks that were released 200, 300 years ago are playing into that as well. But just because a pig's gone wild doesn't mean he transforms like some werewolf. Hey, I'm trying to record here. Can you hold it down? For those of you who don't know or haven't followed the channel much, I operate a podcast. It's called The Pastured Pig, and we talk about basket weaving and crocheting. No, we talk about pastured pigs. And in my 90-plus interviews with producers of all sizes all across the country, there's no discussion of the fear of my pastured pigs getting out and becoming feral. If a pig escapes, the pig comes back. Now, it could be a piglet that you spend all day chasing around because it's a little rocket on legs, but they always come back. They come back to their food sources because they're domestic animals. And yes, some of these producers are indeed in Texas. So what's interesting when it comes to pastured pigs and the issue with feral hogs, really the only issue that I've heard any of my interviewees discuss are feral hogs breaking into their pasture and, knocking up Miss Lucy type of thing, if you know what I'm saying. So you have these unwanted pregnancies. But even unwanted pregnancies have the benefit of being very tasty. Sometimes those unwanted pregnancies can even turn into the farm boss. So you see here, my friend Carrie shared a picture of his sow, Ginger, who's part domestic and she's part feral hog. So you can kind of see she has some unique genetics there. But she hangs out and she's just as chill as anyone else, he says. He said, but when she does raise her razorback and the hair on the back of her neck stands up, then it's time to give her some room. So I appreciate Carrie sharing that picture with me. So feral hogs clearly are not coming from pastured pig operations. If you're going to use hogs, however, on your farm or on your property to do some land clearing and obviously to provide some tasty bacon, then just be responsible for those animals. And you can watch, there's 600 and some videos on this channel that not all of them are about pigs, but a ton of them are. There's other resources out there that can show you how to raise pigs on pasture responsibly and not have issues with them getting free or getting over into the neighbor's yard and tearing up stuff. I want to make one more side point that I think is interesting in doing all this research. And you may think, well, why can't we just hunt feral pigs to extinction? We've done that with the passenger pigeon, the woolly mammoth, the dinosaur. Well, it's interesting in doing my research that hunting of the feral hog is actually discouraged. Now, in places in the South, like in Texas, they've passed a law where you can hunt from a helicopter, which, man, tell me anything that's more fun than a helicopter, an AR-15, and some pig meat. That, to me, sounds like a party all day long. But even now, that's starting to be discouraged a little bit because of the noise and the issues associated with it, that they're trying to get people to hunt from hot air balloons. That one's interesting. But the reason why they discourage hunting is because with single rifle shot and those type of things, you're breaking up the sounder. Fancy word for herd, right? So let's say we've got this huge herd of feral hogs, and I'm in there and I'm shooting 2 or 3 of them before they all scatter. Well, that sounder can scatter and then start to make its own group, so you disperse them. Hunting is discouraged. Trapping is actually the best way of controlling the population. In fact, and I don't want to disparage hunters because I enjoy hunting and I know a lot of other people that do too. It's a very responsible way of controlling animal population. But sometimes hunters kind of want to have their own little pocket, right? It's like, well, I don't want to eradicate all of the feral hogs because we really enjoy hunting feral hogs and feral hog meat is still really tasty. And tell me, Texas, how much money is spent, ergo earned, in your region just in trying to control the feral pig population? Companies that build these killer traps, helicopter companies, ammo, all that. So there's a lot of money in feral hogs. If they were all gone overnight, then there's some industry that gets lost there. So one little side note, and this is from a magazine called The National Hog Farmer, that there's a new contraceptive being tested that is fed to feral boars via hog-specific feeders placed in strategic areas. So no, this isn't somebody sneaking out and putting condoms on the boars. This is a feeder that has a biological agent in the food, and unfortunately this can affect other animals as well. So that's why they try to make hog-specific feeders. But as those boars eat that, it actually decreases or destroys the motility of the sperm in the testes. So it basically makes them sterile. And so they're testing that right now, and that, man, I have all kinds of concerns about that, especially for those of you guys that like to hunt wild hog and eat it. If this biologic agent is in that body, now they say it only stays in the testes and doesn't go anywhere else, but that concerns me. But that's one thing they're working on that would control population just through breeding and not having to trap or eradicate through hunting. So all right, let me have it. Let me have it. Comment below if you think I've said something incorrect, or you've got a story that Grandpa had a pig that grew hair and fangs and sucked the blood out of everybody one night. Then comment below and let me know how that went. And we'll trade some stories. Well, I appreciate everybody watching. Y'all take care.